Hey, how's everybody doing tonight? Healthy and a happy new year. Oh, come on, John, you know how we're doing. We're pissed and we're depressed and we're anxious. That's why we're here. You are. Imagine me. You know what kind of jet football season I just experienced? Huh? We all have our problems, but everything's going to be okay. That's why you are here. So let's keep perspective. Thank God. Hopefully you're well, safe. Let's pray for everybody in California. Everybody should be well. This is the first of what will be a couple of different webinars for you guys as we approach the February bar. Tonight is really kind of more of an overview of where you should be, what you shouldn't be doing, what you should be doing to help use AdaptiBar to help you pass the bar. Use it either as a supplement to your bar course if you're doing it, or how to use it effectively if you're not. I always like to do these webinars and kind of divide them a little bit into talking to both to the first-time taker community, just graduated and taken this for the first time, and the people who've done this before, the repeaters. So I'm going to try to always talk a little bit about, sorry about that, I'm always trying to talk a little bit about to each community, because I think that sometimes the day-to-day and week-to-week bar prep, you kind of needs to change your approach, your priority, how many questions, you know, and all that stuff. So we'll be talking a little bit to both communities, if you don't mind. So first of all, big picture. Here are some common mistakes that people make using AdaptiBar. They do too many questions too quick and exhaust all the questions. So by February, they're upset that they're seeing so many repeat questions. They read too much of the explanation and just pick the answer for tomorrow's question based on the one they did yesterday. They're focusing on too much minutia of law. They're focusing and beginning to anticipate where the questions are going. They exhaust the questions because you're seeing it's pretty addictive. Once you get on there, you know, you get click, 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 and all of a sudden you feel like, hey, let me do more. And all of a sudden I've done 75 questions. That's not necessarily the best thing to do now. And again, that's why we're doing different webinars. The next one at the end of January will be more of a practical, some tips on how to be reading the questions a little more effectively, reducing some of those reading mistakes. And then another one, again, really prepping for the bar. So for now, again, it's more about, okay, how am I navigating these first couple of weeks of bar prep? I always talk about the difference with the February bar, the holidays. So many of you may have had a good plan a couple of weeks ago, but between Christmas and New Year's and everything that happens in life, a lot of people wake up on January 2nd and 3rd and say, oh my God, the bar's in 6-7 weeks. Holy bleep, what am I going to do? When you have that anxiety and panic, what do? You overcompensate. You do too much, too quick to feel good, but it's not necessarily the most effective thing to do. So if you use AdaptiBar the way it was meant, to adapt your strengths and weaknesses, to see what the questions really look like, and to use it as a learning tool and a practice tool, it really is a game changer, in my opinion. So for my repeat takers, been there, done that a couple times, maybe even used AdaptiBar before. Glad you're back, because I think these are the best questions, obviously. Where should you be? What should you be focused on? So no matter who you are, but specifically to my repeat taker friends, one huge mistake is that most people don't know enough black letter law by heart, and they don't keep the rules separate, organized. They're confusing II and NIED. Larceny by trick, false pretenses. Which one's what? I forgot. Murder, manslaughter, character impeachment, all of those things. You can't do the questions effectively if you don't have enough of the rules at the tip of your tongue. There are people, and many repeat takers, who've been told, believe, practice, I can practice my way out of this. If you practice enough of them, you'll figure out the patterns. I disagree. If that worked, you already would have passed. That's the bottom line. The questions are based on the underlying rules. So if you're burnt out on the lectures, burnt out on the courses, can't look at that stuff again, you just don't understand a particular lecture, I get it. But then you just say, let me just go do 50 questions and eventually I'll get better. It doesn't work out that way. So I urge you, try as best as you can to focus on some of the, what I call definitional subjects now, January, tort, crim law, evidence, even Civ Pro to a degree, con law, contract property, very conceptual, very dense. Start with tort, crim law, something that can you can build momentum. I could put these rules in my head. You may not know all. No one can remember everything, but literally, if you just know 10% more of these rules per subject, you can basically be getting an increase of 5 to 10% on your track record, on your performance with the questions. The buzzwords make all the difference in the world. So before you just, I get these phone calls and emails all the time. Hey, I reviewed the tort outline. I'm going to go do 50 questions. I'm going to take a tort practice test. I'm going to go take a 100-question diagnostic. I'll be your diagnostician. You're not going to do well. You're going to get 50-something% right because you're basically guessing on too many questions. So if at this stage, because you're burnt out, you're just practicing questions, I urge you, take a step back. Do one subject. Get it down. Get those rules down. Feel better about your knowledge of the law. What's my mantra as far as the law is concerned? As soon as you get the rules in your head, focus on constant repetition, the recitation of the law. Everyone can study something for a day or two or three or four. Great. The question is, what do you remember next week? Remember those Barbary Themis Kaplan days? The lecture was good. I got the rules. I was scoring 70%. But in 2 weeks later, I forgot 40% of it because they go so fast, because they have to. So you need to come up with a way to keep more law in your head as you're moving towards February. The only way and the quickest way that I know to do that is by the repetition and the recitation. So don't jump in and use up 800 questions right away. Don't just skim, review an outline and start hundreds of questions. Give yourself an extra day or two with the rules and then begin the questions. When you begin the questions, do a smaller set of questions, 7 to 10, 10 to 12, slowly. Why? Make sure you're actually reading them correctly. If you guess right, that doesn't mean it's a good thing. You always want to try to know why the answer is A. Why are the other ones wrong? Rather than just doing a lot and hoping you get a good number. If you know more law, if you can keep more law in your head longer, and you're more focused on slower reading, slow, careful reading, focus on the reading comprehension, the why is it right, then all of a sudden you start to build momentum. I recommend it's a loose number. It'll change for every subject. Once you accumulate over a couple of days, 40, 50 questions in a topic, okay, I'm pretty good. What does that mean, John? Low to mid 60s for your first set of 50 questions or so. You know what you're doing, feeling good with the law. Now I can move on to the next subject. But what do I recommend when you go on to the next subject? Keep reciting rules 50 times a day for 30 or 40 seconds at a time in the first subject. If you review tort, I'm feeling pretty good with tort. I think I'm ready to move on to crim law or evidence. Go ahead. But breakfast, lunch, dinner, in the car, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, keep reciting some of those tort definitions. Otherwise, they go out as quickly as you put them in. Now I'm maintaining tort. While you're learning crim law or evidence and you're going to do those questions, keep doing 1 or 2 tort questions a day, 2 or 3 tort questions. Not a lot, but just enough so you stay fresh with that reading of a tort question. You follow? You're like layering in one subject after the other. So as I'm learning the next one, I'm maintaining the law from what I already did, and I'm doing 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 questions in that subject. I finished crim law review. I'm ready to start some crim law questions, 7, 10, 12, whatever that number is, but I'm always maintaining some tort. And we keep them as separate sets. Don't mix them together. And now I'm pretty good at 2 subjects. Now I'm ready to begin the third. But even by the time you get to the 4th or 5th subject, couple minutes a day, I'm doing some tort. Couple minutes a day, I'm doing some crim. I'm doing 1 or 2 tort questions a day. I'm doing 1 or 2 crim law questions a day. That way you're moving everything forward. So when you finally finish your 7 subject review, then you can begin mix set 30, 40, 45 practice questions, and you're going to be doing better because you're going to remember more of tort, crim law, and all the first 6 subjects. Too many people rush to get to the 7th subject, but then have to go back and do the first 5 all over again. You remember those days. So you're saying to me through the computer, hey, but shouldn't I be doing more practice? Remember, the reason we're having this conversation now is you didn't get enough questions correct. The goal isn't to do 3,000 or 4,000. The goal is to get more questions correct so you pass. So one, you still, by the time you get to the end of January, February, could do 40 or 50 a day times a month. That's a lot of questions, plus all the ones you're going to do now. So you're still going to do more than enough practice. You've already seen and done a lot of these questions. So the question isn't how many am I doing? The question is, can I do better and read better, be more accurate? You with me? It's quality over quantity. That's why I say, don't listen to everybody out there putting all this pressure on you. You know in your gut when you read the question, do you know what you're doing or not? And what I mean by that is, If you make a mistake, do you know why the question is, why you made the mistake, why you got it wrong? Was it the rule or was it the reading comp? When you get a question wrong, you got the red, you got the green. Read the explanation, the first two lines of the explanation. Now, I'm biased and prejudiced, of course. I think the explanations are written wonderfully, and you could refresh a lot of rules in those explanations. But a lot of people get the question wrong, not because they didn't know the law. They screwed up the reading comprehension. So if you're reading 4 paragraphs of law, it's kind of a waste of time because you already know the law. That's not going to fix the problem. That's why you keep making the same mistakes all over again. That's why you call and email me, hey, John, I've done 2,500 questions. Why doesn't my number move? Why am I still bad in these areas of law? Because either those are the areas that you are confusing or mixing up the rule, or you're doing poor reading comprehension. So again, it's your job to figure out question by question, topic by topic. I want to compare the difference between the right answer and my answer. When I read the explanation, I look at my answer. Is that because I confused the rule? I forgot the buzzword, I forgot the definition, or I knew that. Why did I pick A? Oh my God, John would kill me. This is a product liability question. I picked an answer about strict liability. What was I thinking? I went too fast. I didn't spot the issue. I overthought it. I changed my answer, God forbid. That's all reading comp. That's not the minutia of law. So as you're doing these questions, that's another way to self-test yourself. Am I remembering the rules? And whatever rules you're forgetting, you make a little note and say, I got to put those rules back in my head now, tonight, this afternoon, and say them again and again and again as I move forward. Because that's why, respectfully, repeat takers do so much great work, but the number never moves because you're not fixing the underlying mistake. Is it the rule? Is it the reading? You with me? If I bring more law with me every day, if I'm maintaining small but consistent practice in those earlier subjects, then I'm going to be doing better and better and better in the first 2, 3, 4, 5 subjects. So by the time I get to the 7th subject, then you can do practice questions, big practice sets every day, all of February. Rules plus the practice question. Too many people do too many questions too quickly and are overcompensating. The practice tests. Also, I think too many people are doing too many huge practice tests now. There's a time and a place to do that in the January and February after you've learned the law, and now I can actually go on there, that when they call it simulating the bar. Well, that simulates it presumes the idea that you're simulating the experience. When you go to the bar exam, you actually know the law and you're prepared to do the questions. Taking all these huge tests now don't really tell you anything. And even too many large diagnostic tests. I'm talking you know what I'm talking about. Some of you guys do 50 and 100 and all this. Listen, you haven't looked at this stuff in a little while. And even again, if you're guilty of looking at it, but kind of skimming, getting the gist of it, I reread it, but you're not really memorizing enough law, again, you're just basically guessing at these questions. It's a waste of the questions. Use the questions as like little golden nuggets. This is really what the bar exam is going to look like. I want to give myself the best shot at the questions to prove I know what I'm doing. Repeat taker, this time of year, emphasize more law review and memorization. And the easiest way to do that is constant repetition, self-test. And if you forget, don't panic. It's better you realize today what you're getting wrong, or tomorrow or Friday what you're forgetting, than in 2, 3, 4 weeks. That's what happens. Bring more law with you, smaller numbers, smaller quantities now, then you have all of end of January and February to do more. I'm not trying to be anyone's mother and control how much. I want more accuracy and more effective reading. At the risk of sounding like a used car salesman, because I hate this part of it, but that's why you're here. If you've seen any of the videos, the MBE videos that are on AdaptiBar, want to make sure you're aware of that separate video that's on there called Mastering the MBE. That is, again, what I call an instructional video, reviewing a lot of common mistakes that people make with the reading comp and why am I picking A and looking at the call of the question and getting it down to 2 and all of that stuff, and my own real approach on how to read the questions. So I appreciate, more than you know, very humbled if you've watched my tort video, con law, whatever it is. I feel better with the law, but I'm still missing a lot of questions. Make sure you're looking out for that Mastering the MBE video that really focuses on why you should be picking A versus why you should be picking B, C, and D. Speaking of that, I'll also say something. A lot of people, and I'm very humbled by, will email or call me and say, hey, I watch you during bar prep more than I talk to my family. You know, we'll listen to you all day. I watch your videos so many times. I do appreciate that, like I said, more than you know. But remember, piggyback off what I just said before, you shouldn't necessarily be relying on just watching the same video over and over again. You want to watch, make an outline, use the one provided to you, and begin to memorize and recite more of those rules, so you're not just rewatching me saying the same thing. Because when people watch it too often, it feels good, you feel like you understand it when I'm explaining it, but that kind of proves there's no retention. And that's why in February, you don't want to feel like you need to see me. You want to feel like you can put more pressure on doing more practice. My little formula, the first half of bar prep, this first month, should be 2/3 law, 1/3 practice. After end of January and all of February, should be 2/3 practice and 1/3 review. You with me? Just prioritizing. So overly focus on really being honest with yourself. Do I know these rules? Can I recite them? Are they at the tip of my tongue? I'm pretty good with talk. Let me start some practice questions. And then layer in one after the other. You get to all 7, then you can go and start practice sets. I also, by the way, we'll talk more about this at the end of the month. I still always recommend now, again, this time of year, you're in learning mode, so to speak. You always recommend doing the questions in what's called practice mode. So you see the explanation, the answer right after. In February, you could be switching to exam mode. We'll talk about that later, where you're just doing it like a test, one question after the other. Because again, you literally want to learn from your mistakes. But again, learning from your mistakes doesn't mean, let me just read all 4 answer choices and outline from the explanation. In the first 2 sentences of that explanation, you should know whether you forgot the buzzwordy rule, maybe didn't understand it, and if you didn't understand the law at all, then you need that longer explanation to understand, fine. But most of the questions, you may have known the rule, you could have just forgotten a piece, an element of the definition. You know that in the first 2 sentences, just shove it right back in your head. Let's go to the next question. Or the big one, you did know the rule. You understood the rule. You had the words right at the tip of your tongue. You screwed up the reading comp. Always ask the why. Why did I miss it? And separate the mistakes. I call it the 2 piles of questions. Always have one pile based on, these are the rules I keep forgetting, John. I really have to push myself to get these more cemented in my head. Great. It's only January. These are the ones over here. I'm totally screwing up the reading. I'm in my own head. I'm not focusing on the facts, etc. We have our first-time takers. Graduated, you're doing a commercial course, fine, great. Right now, this time of year, the reason people, I think, don't use AdaptiBar in the right way is a lot of students watch their commercial lecture, do the assignment from their company, and then try to squeeze in AdaptiBar late at night after. They're trying to do both every day. Myself, personally, I think that's a bad idea because you're burnt out, you're exhausted, so you're basically enhancing, you're practicing bad reading habits. One eye's closed, you're glazing out, you're kind of questioned out. It's a long, long day. I've heard some people get up really, really early and sneak in 30 AdaptiBar before the lecture. I also kind of, I'm not being your mother. I kind of worry about that too. Again, you're following your course. You know how long those lectures are. Learn the rules first. Use the course as it's there for, to learn the material. They're giving you the lecture. You have the book. You have the little book. Extract the black letter law. And then give yourself that time to review. You sit down and do your commercial questions that night. Great. The same principles I'm talking about for AdaptiBar questions work for all the other questions. Focus a little more on the reading comp, on why I'm getting these questions right or wrong. For the first couple of weeks now, bar prep, until you take your simulated MBE test. Every course gives one of those simulated MBE, the practice test. The goal when you get to that test should be, I know as much black letter law as I can. So, every waking moment during the week, Monday to Friday, I would err on the side of focusing on more of the law review and doing your course provided questions. On the weekend, Friday night, Saturday, Sunday, you could do an extra supplemental set of AdaptiBar in whatever topics you've already covered. So if they did Civ Pro and property, okay, Friday night, a little extra review, and now I can go do 10, 15 property, 5 or 10 Civ Pro. Saturday, I'm going to do 10, 15 of each. Sunday, I could do another set of 10, 15 of each. And again, because you all get too worried about the numbers, you're already seeing the repeat takers know from doing this, even now a couple of weeks into bar prep. Is it easier to read 25 tort or evidence questions compared to 25 contract or property? For sure. So that's why the number, people get too married to the number. You have to make sure you're doing quality reading. So some of you out there may like evidence, feel good about evidence, they assigned you evidence, and you feel like, hey, on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, I can go do 20, 25 evidence questions. No big deal. Great. But you can't do 25 property questions in a row easily. That's tough. So again, quality over quantity. Less can be more if you're learning from the mistakes, and eventually then by end of the month in February, doing that much more. Remember the other thing. On the actual bar exam, you're not going to do 25 property questions in a row. You're not going to do 25 contract questions in a row. You have to do those now when your course assigns them to you because, one, that's what you have to do, and you don't have a lot of time to do that many questions. You got to do what you got to do. But once you understand what all this looks like in terms of prepping for the bar, hey, if I spent Monday to Friday learning the law as best as I can, I used my commercial questions to kind of get an idea of what all this looks like. I see which areas I'm pretty good. I see which areas I need to go back and review. Now on the weekend, okay, I did another review, got it in my head. Now I'm going to go see what real bar questions look like in those areas. That's, again, to prep you for what's coming. Monday to Friday is to learn more law. AdaptiBar then says, assuming you know the law, here's what the questions are going to look like. 15 to 20 a day, 10 to 15, depending on the subject. You may need a little more review on Saturday of property. So take it. If you do fewer questions one weekend, who cares? As long as the questions you do are better read. You with me? Better, more quality than just quantity. You need a little more, you can do a little less, perfectly fine. But by Sunday night after the weekend, you should feel much more confident. Okay, I really pushed myself with the review, like you said. And yeah, even if I was struggling on the first 50, 60 I did from my course on Monday to Friday, now that I use the AdaptiBar program and the questions, now I really see what they look like. They're not as bad as I thought. I can see where I can improve. I'm okay. You will generally see, if you know the law, you generally will see a difference in your stats from your AdaptiBar questions from a lot of your commercial program. Why? Because the actual bar questions, which is why we recommend you do AdaptiBar in February exclusively, is because these are licensed actual questions, with the exception of some civil procedure and a couple of other questions. 90 whatever percent of the bank of questions are actual licensed questions. That's what the bar is going to look like. Many of your course questions, which are perfectly fine to use to learn the law, are really, really specializing or emphasizing on little nuances of law, little rules. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just that it's not going to be as representative on the real exam, which is, again, why I say don't do them together at the same time. Use the Monday to Friday to learn, and then on the weekend, okay, now that I know the rules and I've seen what it looks like, then I see what the actual question will look like. After the second weekend, the third, now this coming weekend, my goal for you would be, hey, if you get to Friday night and you can do it, or Saturday morning, and you could do a good little review of any of the MBE topics your course has already covered. What's it, 4 or 5? Could be more, could be 6, but 4 or 5 on average. And you want to do a little 7 questions, 10 question set in each of those between Saturday and Sunday. So by next Monday, I'm even feeling better. You follow what I'm saying? Any of the subjects you've already done, do small sets of those on the weekend. I still recommend in independent little sets. Don't mix them up. You're not taking the bar on January 9, 10, 11, and 12. You want to maximize your expertise at each subject one at a time. Then, when you're so good and knowledgeable at all 7, and you've seen several hundred questions in each of those subjects, then you can go at the end of the month, which is why that's the next couple webinars. That's what that's about. Then you can go push the button, exam mode, 50 questions, and take practice tests. But remember, one of my many mantras, especially right now, which is why we're here, you can't pass or fail the bar in early January. So even if you're taking your practice test and you get 75%, what difference does that make? Doesn't mean you're going to pass. You get 58%. The only thing that's going to happen is you get stressed. Why? Who cares? As long as you're learning from the mistakes. But I'd rather you be doing that day to day to day than wasting an hour or two or three or more taking practice tests as if that's some sort of declaration of how you're going to do on the bar. That's for February. Right now, stick to what your course is doing. Stick to the course syllabus as best as you can. But your goal day to day should be do those questions and leave AdaptiBar for the weekend. Once they are done with their MBE lectures and they give you your practice test, then what I say, okay, now you can incorporate AdaptiBar on a day-to-day basis and use that as your primary default group of questions. Yes, that's what I think would be appropriate to do, 100%. But if you're taking a course, and I'm sorry, first time, even if you're repeating, but you're taking a different course or you're doing the course again for all kind of reasons, which is perfectly great and fine, remember, most people overcompensate. They give me this, I never want to do this again. Nobody wants to do this again. Everybody wants to pass. You want to do it the right way. So, repeat taker, I can do my own lecture, my own outlining, my own review of my rules. Do it, but overemphasize the rule, small sets, and as you're moving forward, layer in one subject at a time. You're taking a course, do it, do what they tell you to do, and use the weekend as that supplement. People then want to go on AdaptiBar before the simulated exam, and again, do even more. No, before your simulated practice MBE, you should be really reviewing the law. So when you sit down and do those 100 or 200, you're giving yourself the best chance because you know more of those rules. The number one email I get after the simulated exams are, hey, John, I've been studying 18 hours a day. I've done everything I was told to do, and I did AdaptiBar, and I'm getting 102 out of 200 right, 103 right, 104, 95. I'm freaking out. What should I do? Well, by definition, if you're around 50% correct, usually, that means there's too many of those rules that you forgot. That's the problem. Because again, your course has you moving so fast to get to the middle of January, you don't remember what you did in December. So again, even when you're planning to take the simulated from your company, that's why I say you want to overemphasize that review and recitation of those buzzwords, because so many of those questions on the simulated are just really definitional questions, buzzwordy definitions. There is the reading comp element, but at least from all the students that I work with at the schools where I teach here in South Florida, the average person who does poorly on that simulated, I tell them, well, if you got 105, you made 95 mistakes. I'm going to bet that of the 95 questions you got wrong, 30 of the 95 were just stupid rules that you just forgot. Well, if you just put 12 or 15 of those back in your head, not all 30, just half, then you're already over a 120 raw score and you're perfectly fine before you even fix the reading comp mistakes. You follow? So anybody that's a little lower, if they just fixed more of those rules they woulda, coulda, shoulda known, they're perfectly fine. Again, what happens? People overuse AdaptiBar because the lectures are so long. Remember, what's the goal from your outline, whatever outline you're using. Again, if you're using one you made from before, you're doing this for the first time, you're using a book, whatever the case may be. You're just trying to extract the black letter law, the rules. That's what each MBE question is really testing you on. You get too deep in the minutia of the law, you can't see the big picture, and you're thinking too much. Stick to the definition. You know a lot of law. Many of those people overpick the definitional answer. I always say in tort, there's always an answer about assumption of the risk. That answer sounds good. Would John be liable? No, if he assumed the risk. Yeah, that makes sense, because if he assumed the risk, he wouldn't be liable. Yeah, I like that. That answer could be legally true, and the people who know that rule as a defense love that answer, but the reason it's not the correct answer is because generally it has nothing to do with the facts. You're not looking at that because you're not carefully reading the question. You're focusing too much on the answer. And too many people who read too fast, focusing too much on the best answer, getting it down to 2, are people who are trying again to do too many questions too fast. Because instinctively, if you know you got to do 30, you know you're trying to do 40 or 50, you're trying to get to the next one as soon as possible. Because ultimately you want to finish the quiz, finish the assignment, see how you did. And I'm saying flip it around and do it the other way. I'm going to go all in on reading better at the top. Again, that's what that instructional video is for. So what do I say to a lot of people who call me and say, I'm bad at property, John, what should I do? I'm bad at con law, what should I do? I don't know. Are you bad at the law of that subject? Are you bad at reading the questions? Because you're going to get the questions wrong either way. But the issue is when you get the question wrong, is that because you didn't remember what scrutiny goes with which people? You didn't remember what the fundamental rights were? Or I knew it, but I totally misread the actual fact pattern. Those are two very different mistakes. The AdaptiBar explanation will tell you why A is correct and give you the rule again. But if you knew the rule, it's not going to help you. Focus on the reading comp. The issue is always the why. So right now, early mid-January, you guys want to be focusing on why am I okay on some, why am I a little lower? As great as AdaptiBar questions are, there's only roughly about 1,900 and change, almost 2,000, somewhere in there. You can add those questions up pretty quick. There are also people who go the other way. Their head is buried in the book. And then I get calls and emails and see people, you know, John, you know what my problem was last time? I didn't do enough AdaptiBar. You follow? It's a happy medium. It's a very delicate balance. Yeah, how do I know when I should just get in and start doing the questions? You're telling me to be careful. When you know you can speak enough of the rules. You'll never know everything. That's why I also recommend for bar prep, don't overwhelm yourself with just 3 boxes of stuff. You with me? You have an outline, pick the one you like, pick the most condensed one with the black letter law that's easy for you to read, understand, and comprehend, and stick to that. If then you need to go into your course, if you're taking a course, you know, John, I'm doing these questions, I'm doing contracts, but I don't know what I'm doing. Then stop doing more questions. People then leave their course and they, let me try some AdaptiBar questions. But if you know you don't know the law, those questions aren't going to go well either. So some people don't spend too much time only with the law and are afraid to do the questions because they're afraid they're going to do bad. Some people know the law and are doing it the other way. How do I know? If you can speak enough of those definitions, you're ready to begin the questions. If you forget, you don't understand, then you've got the bigger outline, a video lecture, supplemental books, etc., to go use it for additional examples, explanations, etc. But if you know the law, that only comes down to whether you can recite. And if you can, you're perfectly fine. You forget, use your notes, shove it back in your head. But don't read the explanations for 4 hours and don't have your head buried in a 120-page outline for 8 hours. You're just trying to pluck out and extract from all those sources the rule so that you can apply it then on the question. What's the point of this? To find that delicate balance between just enough practice so I'm beginning to get more consistent and see what I should be seeing from the facts and the answer choices versus just studying all day versus only doing questions. The middle ground is the way to go. Later on will be plenty of time for more questions. So if you find that you're here because you found the program late, you got on and you're a little behind in your bar prep and you're freaking out, what should I do? Should I just go on AdaptiBar and start doing a bunch of questions? No. Law first, then practice. Once you have a subject decent, that's about 50 questions. I'm in the 60s. I'm feeling good with my knowledge. Now I'm going to keep reciting some rules every day. You're not going to finish the whole outline, by the way. No one can do all 4 subjects, 3 subjects, or 7 subjects in its entirety every day. But you know what? A couple of tort rules in the morning driving to work or having breakfast, a couple of rules around lunch from another subject, a few at dinner, going to sit on the couch, watch some TV, go right ahead. Put the TV on mute during the commercial, recite some rules. When you then finally sit down to do your practice questions, shut the TV off, turn the phone off, get everything away, and really focus here on your reading comprehension. As I like to say, hear the little voice really talking to yourself. Not about how fast, not about how many. Am I getting more correct? Did I read them the right way? Oh, and by the way, I haven't checked the chat yet, but I get this question a lot. Should I be doing time, John? Should I be doing like open book where I'm looking at my outline? Let's talk about that for a few minutes. On AdaptiBar, there is the clock. Should you be concerned about the timing now? No. You want to focus on, again, like I said earlier, why am I getting it right? Why am I getting it wrong? And by the way, people get crazy about that 1.8 minutes. That's the average. In contracts and in property, some con law, will it take you 2 minutes and 30 seconds on some of those questions? Yeah. So a lot of the evidence questions, you'll be done in like 25 seconds. So remember, they're all mushing everything together. They're all worth 1 point. You're doing them all. So for every 3 or 4 that takes you an extra 40 seconds, there's 25 that'll take you 15 seconds. Don't worry. And since you're not doing 30 property and 25 contracts in a row on the bar, you don't have to worry about the time it's taking you. You're using them for learning tools. What does it look like? On AdaptiBar, if the clock bothers you now, early January, take it off. Because if it's distracting you to read too fast, and now you're doing a lot of questions, but you're missing some because of the bad reading, that's going to affect you on the bar. Take the clock off and focus more on slower reading so you get more correct. Once you've completed the 7 subjects and you're now really in practice exam mode, okay, I'm doing 25, I'm doing 30, I'm doing 50, you put the clock on there, now you're really sharpening up your timing and all of your stamina, all of that stuff. That's all of February you can do that. End of January, all of February. But remember now, don't look at it as I'm taking practice and simulating exam circumstances. No, you're not. You're learning the underlying fundamentals. If you're a first-time taker, for sure that's the case. Should I use my notes, John? Here's my feeling on that. When you do whoever you are, when you're doing a practice set in a subject, I always recommend have the outline next to you. You and I both know there are some rules you could teach that stuff. I know that. I know that. You come across the question, is John liable for battery? John liable for emotional distress? John guilty of larceny? I'm not looking at the notes just to really, really be sure, because that slows you down and you feel a little insecure. Trust what you know and read the damn question the right way aggressively. You're looking at a question and you say, I think this is parole evidence. I forgot about that. There's a rule or an exception with when the thing always comes in, even if it's a complete integration, there's a rule. I can't remember. Go into your notes, take a look, and now go apply it with the question. This way, at least when you are choosing an answer, you're not just going eeny, meeny, miny, mo. You're not just guessing. You with me? You don't want to do it all the time, but you don't want to just do the questions cold just to see what'll happen. Because you're going to get a lot of them wrong, and it's frustrating, and it's depressing, because it's not a fair fight. Use it when you need, but remember, whatever rules you need to look should be another sign to you, as I said for 20 minutes at the beginning, hey, these are rules I don't remember. Maybe in the morning I should push myself to do a little more recitation and remember more of these rules. Because if I don't remember it today and tomorrow, when am I going to remember it? I can't cram it at the end of February. So it's kind of a 2-for-1. I'm feeling confident that there's a bunch of questions. I don't need to look at my notes, but I have it there as a security blanket, because if I need to, I want to do it. When you do your course or you're reviewing contracts or property, you haven't looked at it for a while. You're doing it for the first time in a course. Even if the stuff makes sense to you as you're going down the lecture or reviewing your outline, if that's from 9 to 1, by 7, 8 o'clock when you're doing the questions, who can remember all that stuff? So my point is, even when they assign you 25 contract questions, 25 property, and you're doing them, you don't want to just do them for the sake of doing them to check the box. You want to make sure you're applying the right rule to the question. That builds good habits, good reading habits. That is the key. So don't look when you don't have to. Don't micromanage every rule. But when you know you need as a quick refresher, look, and then go back and apply the question, read the question with that confidence, and slowly wean off of the notes, because too many people, in my opinion, do everything open book, looking at everything, and the number is skewed. It's not a real, hey, John, I'm getting 85%. When I hear that, I say, someone's got to be using the outline. It must be taking them 8 minutes a question. When are you going to stop that? Because if you wait too late to do it, you don't have time to actually remember anything. Some people do everything closed book, and then their number is bad, and they start losing their confidence, and they're not focusing on getting the law back in their head. What do? They're just doing more questions. So, big picture, for now, how do I use AdaptiBar? Where should I be? I want to feel like I'm in more learning mode of rules. Use the questions to reinforce. If you're using a course and they're telling you how many questions to do a day, do it. And use AdaptiBar on Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday to supplement. Once the course is done with the MBE portion of the lecture, then I could be using AdaptiBar every single day. You're doing this on your own. Give yourself a real chance to learn the law first, then small sets of questions. And again, I'm saying small because you're not going to stop. So the old way is people would do 50 a day for 3 days, then leave it alone and go on to the next subject. I'm saying do 15, 12, 15, 16 times 3 days, then keep doing 1 or 2 a day until the frickin' bar exam. You're not going to stop. You with me? But at least you're carrying more of these rules with you. Focus on law and just enough practice. So by the end of this month, you really segue into that much more practice. And this way, you're really balancing the two. Use AdaptiBar as that effective tool, not just a toy to do 2,000 questions really quick, because you do not want to exhaust all the questions now and then be upset next month. Hey, oh, I've seen all these questions, John. There is repeat questions. If and when that happens, which it will, quick note on that, because even sometimes it can happen, whatever subjects you begin with, that's the one you're going to see the most amount of questions on. So you'll see repeat questions in those topics more frequently. If and when you get a question, you say, I've seen this before. Remember, there's a lot of questions on AdaptiBar that use the same derivative hypo, but they're different questions. That's the reading comp that I'm screaming about all day long. So sometimes if you read too fast, oh, I've seen this one, it's A. Why it's not A? I just did it yesterday. It's not the same question. It's the same hypo, but they changed and manipulated the facts of the question a little bit. That's what you want to focus on. What if it's the same exact question, John? I've seen this one before. I know it. I picked A. Or I've seen this one before. I picked A, but the correct answer is C. Too many people just go, I'm going to pick C now, and now I'm at 90% for the day. Doesn't help, really. What you want to do is say, even if I remember what the right answer is, and I got it wrong the first time, study the question. Study the facts. Why is the answer A? Why did I pick C? What did I miss? Did I read too quick? Did I not spot the issue? Did I overanalyze? Did I not see that line 3, line 4 told me everything I need to know? Argue in your head, what did I miss? And even if you end up picking C and you got it right, it'll pad your stats. But as long as you now see up here why it was the right answer, that's again called learning from your mistakes. And all of a sudden, you're getting a lot of those other new versions of those questions right because you're building in good reading habits. Milk the questions for what they're, when you want to keep them for the month of February. Use them as learning tools now. Don't abuse the system. So when I see you again in a couple of weeks, we could really talk about, now that I've done a first set of several questions, John, several hundred, hey, now if I'm still having problems with my reading comp, what's going on? I hit a wall doing questions. It'll be just enough time in a couple of weeks, the last week in January, we're going to get together and we're going to walk through some real questions just to kind of show you in real time what some of the common mistakes are. And then we'll have one more final kind of a pep talk thing, what you should be doing the last couple of weeks. If you do have, just again, as a throwing out all of the resources, you happen to have any issues for writing regarding essays, etc., now AdaptiBar has expanded and they have a writing program too, so always feel to check out that. The critical pass flashcards are great for review too. Quick, concise, black letter definition, great. So again, I don't want to be a hypocrite. You don't want to go get 45 things and then be so spread so thin, you don't have time to do anything. If you feel you need a little better and more condensed version of a card, there's that possibility. You need some help with the writing portion, whatever jurisdiction, there is that help. So again, it's not just MBE anymore. Use the program for maximize the value where you can. But as far as MBE is concerned, for those questions, really, really focus again on the quality of the question that you're doing, not just doing it. I'm just going to quickly scan. We have a few minutes here. As far as specific questions, again, I don't mean to skirt the question. When people talk about, should I read the call of the question? How should I be reading the answer choices? All that stuff that's going on. Again, at the risk of sounding like a used car salesman, that Mastering the MBE standalone video will in great detail go right into the pros and cons of doing all of those things. I'm also seeing something here. Give me 1 second. Again, the best way for memorization is the constant repetition. You will be shocked how much will stick if you can continue to recite those rules. Not everything, but every 1 or 2 a day that you keep in your head. And you may not realize how much is in there right now because you're not forcing yourself to actually do it. So like I say, pick a subject, not 7. Pick a subject: tort, crim law, theft, larceny, burglary, robbery, conspiracy. Push yourself. And if you hesitate for a moment, don't freak out. Calm, relax, breathe. It's in there. If it's not in there and you just draw a blank, that tells you, I need to go put the rule in my head, say it 5, 6 times, understand it, walk to the kitchen, speak it again, speak it at dinner, breakfast, lunch, keep reciting. Make your dog or cat the smartest pet in the house. Whatever it takes, you're a significant other, speak the rules. The more you speak, the more it locks it in, right? What's my proof? How many Swifties are out there, right? There's got to, statistically speaking, there's got to be a couple of Swifties out there, or whatever your music pleasure is. All the songs that are in your head. When the music comes on, you don't remember every word perfectly immediately, but it's in there. Oh, that's you know what I'm talking. You hear the tune, a couple of words, I don't remember. Oh, there it is. Now I got it. And you're right, you sing the whole song. It's wired in there because you've listened and sung it 5 million times. You may not have it immediately, but 5 or 10 seconds, if you relax, it's going to be in there. That's what happens on the MBE if you have, and for your rule statements for essay. Lastly, I want to say, every rule that you feel better that you have at the tip of your tongue are rules you can write out for essay, especially for my UBE people, because most, not all, but most of those rules for all the MBE topics are the same rules you're going to write for an essay. It's literally 2 for 1. So the more effective you are to speak, the easier and more confident you will be to type. And then on MBE, you just have to worry about the reading comp. And on your essay, you just worry about the formatting and all that stuff. But that's the easy part. The one common denominator is the essay and the multiple choice question has to be armed with those stupid buzzwords. Recitation over and over again memorizes, keeps it in there, and more importantly, you feel more confident. And some of you know how I feel about that. When you sit down and read these questions, you gotta feel like you got 2 chips on your shoulder. I know I'm not getting them all right. Intellectually, I'm not getting 200 right, but I'm gonna read 200 like I have a chance to get it right. And if I know my little rule and I read that fact pattern the right way, slowly, carefully, spot the issue, know what answer I'm looking for, and do what John says, which is shut up and pick it, be confident and aggressive, you're going to score much better than you ever thought possible. If you're not sure about too much law, then you're thinking and hesitating and looking at the ceiling, and that's where you end up changing your answer, second guessing, etc. It really is a chicken egg cause and effect. So this time of year, on February 8th, whenever we're going to get back together in February, I'll be giving you a different strategy, and that'll be more about how to practice more questions. But you got to get to that time by feeling better with the law and using AdaptiBar now to prove, hey, I know enough law, I'm ready to move on to the next subject. That's what we're talking about. First half of bar prep, second half of bar prep. Prioritize. Don't exhaust the program right now. Use it as a supplement for your commercial course on the weekend. Use it day by day if you are planning on that, but smaller sets now, but more consistency on the topics as you progress. Stay confident, stay aggressive. Even if you have to fake it, you do it, but always feel like you're reciting enough law and focus a lot on that reading comprehension. And if you really, really focus on the reading comprehension, why I'm picking A and why the others are wrong, you are slowly but surely going to improve more than you ever thought possible. I look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks. Maintain your law, use the program correctly. So when we get together again to review some practice questions and give you some more tips about how to move forward into February, generally after your simulated MBE, which is why we do that at the end of January, most of everybody has already done their practice test, and now they're focusing on the second half of bar prep. So get to our next meeting by the end of January, using the program now as we discussed, focus on those day-to-day and weekend fundamentals, and then we revisit things later to get into more of the mechanics of reading each question, and then what to do when you can do more questions. Okay? Again, hope everybody had a good holiday. Put the blinders on, focus. Oh, and lastly, I apologize because I can't shut up. The hour thing. Listen, everyone's an adult, okay? Especially if you're a repeat taker. Hey, when you graduate and you have those 2 months, most people do, not everybody, but a lot of people, when they have the 2 months right after graduation, it's all about bar prep. After that time, that's not the case anymore. Work, life, family obligation. How many hours, John? How many hours? You do the best you can, okay? I can't make more hours per day. What I recommend, though, is if you're stressed for time, obligation, work, etc., the time you have to sit at the desk, you know, the 7 to 9, the 8 to 10 p.m., whatever time you sit at the desk to study, that should be for learning more law and fewer questions. Again, he says, so if you're stressed for time during the week, again, put the emphasis on the law review, and then the weekend could be more questions when hopefully you have a little more time. And all the dead time during the day, driving to the office, driving home, the lunch hour, that's where you push yourself for that repetition recitation to keep the law. You can't do it all from 8 to 10. But if I spend most of my day reviewing and reciting a lot of law, and then I can use the evening when I have the time for getting those rules and firmly getting them in my head, and doing small sets if I can during the week, then I set myself up on the weekend for more quality practice on AdaptiBar to reinforce my knowledge of the law. We're on the honor system. We're all doing the best we can, and that's why the repetition is the best way to memorize. Good. I really, really appreciate you hanging out here. We want to keep it quick and practical, so hopefully you can have some dinner and go back and focus on that review. Thanks so much again. I really appreciate it. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks for another webinar. The company will be in touch with you, of course. And as always, you can always reach out if you have any questions. Take care, best of luck, and keep shutting up and picking it.